Hello everyone, I'm Will Presti and I'm excited to bring you another episode of Beauties and the Beasts. You know, the word bad boy isn't often thrown around in the world of advertising or business in general, but it certainly applies to today's guest. That's because since the day he started his very first agency in 1987, at the age of just 29, Jon Bond has been pushing envelopes and stirring up controversy, all while creating hugely successful ad campaigns for some of the world's biggest brands. More than just a rebel, Jon changed the game. He's credited with inventing the pop-up store, sidewalk advertising, and the concept of viral marketing. But it's his ability to take the pulse of the nation and put a clever spin on the latest hot-button issue that led to him being one of the most iconic advertisers of his generation. Once called the OG of disruptive marketing, Jon sat down with me here in New York's financial district to discuss a bevy of topics, including his personal beef with Donald Trump and how Kenneth Cole and a dictator's wife gave him his big break. Buckle your seatbelts. This is Jon Bond. I'm sitting here with Mr. Jon Bond, the one and only advertising legend. Thanks so much for joining us today. Let's get right into it. You founded your first agency in 1987 at just 29 years old, making millennials like myself feel like we haven't accomplished very much in our lives to this point. That's very young. I mean, did you always know that advertising was for you? I mean, when you know, little kids watch a commercial for Fruit Loops, they say, I want Fruit Loops. Were you saying, I want to create commercials for Fruit Loops one day? I mean, when did this start?
No, not at all. No, I didn't know what I wanted to do, or else I would have studied more in college. I wasn't anything.
Right.
And there was a recession as I was graduating college, and the summer before, I had a summer job. And at that point, the worst summer job in New York was to be a messenger, not even a bike messenger. And
on foot?
On foot, right?
Yeah.
Subway mostly.
Okay.
We'd deliver these packages. I'd go to Madison Avenue and walk in, and all these people look really good looking. They look like they were having fun. I go, what is this? Oh, it's an ad agency. I could do that. That's literally how.
Right.
And I found this dusty old copy of David Ogilvy, Confessions of an Advertising Man. I started reading it, and then I said, I definitely could do this. This looks like fun. So that's how I got involved in it.
What was the first agency you worked for?
Every agency I worked for went out of business. First they go down to a letter, and then they disappear. First agency was I had an internship at Trout and Reese, which was more marketing consultancy, guys that created positioning, wrote all those books on positioning, which I learned more there than anywhere else, because that's the central tenet, I think, in marketing. Right. Then I worked at Jordan Case McGrath, Corey Kay and Partners, and a couple other places. And I always thought, well, this doesn't seem so hard. I think I could do this. Yeah. So that's when I really started thinking, I think I could do something here.
Now, the origin of your first agency that you created in 1987 is just such an interesting story. I was reading it. I was laughing. It involves the 1980s, Imelda Marcos, author James Patterson, and Kenneth Cole. Can you please give your version of how it all went down?
Patterson, who's like the best-selling author next to, God, or whoever wrote the Bible.
Right.
Maybe he's even sold more. Who knows? He was the creative director of J. Walter Thompson. He had 0 novels published.
Right.
But every morning he got to the office at 5 a.m. and he'd work on his first novel from 5 to 8. And he wanted to elevate the creative reputation of the agency. And Richard and I I'd met Kenneth Cole, trolling for clients for an agency. And he's like, I hate agencies. I hate advertising. And I said, well, what do you like?
Right.
Oh, I like doing good and public service and that sort of thing. So I sort of filed that away. And then I said, Richard, and then I went to his office. And again, he had a lot of very attractive women there, and selling shoes. And it was kind of a fun environment. And Richard and I said, well, what if we'll just comment on public affairs and on current events, and we'll just have Kenneth give his opinion on it. It won't be quote advertising. So we had this idea originally, the Imelda Marcos ad. Imelda Marcos bought 2,700 pairs of shoes. She could have at least had the courtesy to buy a pair of ours. Signed Kenneth Cole. And we had no media plan. So we'd wait for something to happen. You know, political leader would be in town. Ronald Reagan would say something crazy, and we'd do an ad on it. And then boom, you know, the press would pick up on it, and it would, you know, we'd spend little teeny bits of money, but it would become part of pop culture.
Right.
And one day Richard was in the office, and J. Walter Thompson and Jim Patterson went around to everyone in the creative department, hundreds of people, with these Kenneth Cole ads. He walked into Richard's office as he walked into everybody's office and said, "Why can't we do ads like this?" And Richard said, "Oh, that's our freelance account." And we quit.
We did do that.
That's the story. Well, yeah, we used to use their bullpen to do mechanicals and pay people after work, and people would go, "Oh, I didn't know we did Kenneth Cole. That's pretty cool."
Wow.
So yeah, and then our objective was to go to nice restaurants and break even. So we'd go to expensive restaurants and do freelance and make enough money to pay for the bill. So
yeah,
food and wine was always a founding principle.
And for those maybe younger viewers, my generation who don't know, Imelda Marcos was wife of a dictator, essentially, who had made waves for socializing, going out, the fashion and all, over 2,000. Was it 2,000?
2,500.
2,500. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we specialized in, despots and dictators. And we did some ads for Donald Trump once.
Okay.
Which was fun. Remember, we got called up to his office, Trump Tower, and he was launching the Trump Taj Mahal Casino. Mm-hmm. And just as he was about to launch it, his first big affair kind of breaks. The cover of the New York Post, Marla Maples, and it said, "Best sex I ever had was with the Donald," signed Marla. And he loved that headline, thought it was the greatest. Yes. Ivana didn't like it, but he loved it. So a few days later, Richard and I are in the office, and we get a call in the morning, and this is back when we had speakerphones, and we go, it's Donna and Marla. We're at the presidential suite of the Trump Taj Mahal, and we have the idea. And Marla says, "The camera zooms in on us right now." And I pop my head up from under the covers. I look straight at the camera and I say, "Best sex I ever had was at the Trump Taj Mahal. And Donald, you'll pay me a lot of money to say it." True story, word for word.
That's unbelievable. That's
no, not really. Then it was. Now it's like, I guess, well, of course, that's what happened.
The presidential suite has changed somewhat since the term.
The president hasn't.
Exactly, but wow, that's unreal. Did you guys did a market Trump steaks or Trump ice or any of these other Trump products?
No, we're not guilty of any of those things.
I'm glad we would have had to cut
But we
the
were
interview.
Also working for Ivana. Then Trump gave Ivana the plaza to run to keep her happy. And so we were working for her too, but Donald didn't know it. And we'd go back and forth between the plaza and the Trump Tower, which are right across the street from each other. So we were cheating on Donald.
Well, some would say serendipitously.
Yes.
Did you come up with "you're fired"? Was that you?
With what?
You're fired.
No, we missed
Apprentice.
that. But we were on The Apprentice. I'll tell you the Apprentice story. The assignment was to do a pop-up store for a $400 coffee maker. So they gave both. They Googled us, the team, and found us and hired us. And said, "Okay, you have 18 hours to open this pop-up store, and you have a $25,000 budget." And the other group in the competition hired someone else, right? So we open the store and we stay up all night and doing it. And it occurred to me that there's no way we're going to sell any $400 coffee makers in 8 hours. Like, no one's just going to walk by and go, "I'll just walk into a store that just opened." And I go, "I don't want to lose on national TV." So what I did is I took the $25,000 and I said, "Everybody give out money to everybody to come in and buy the coffee makers." So like my nanny kids coming in with the coffee maker, and we won like 130 to 0.
Did the show know you did that? Was that okayed by them? Was that against the rules?
You know, here's the funny thing that we now know today. I don't think they cared. Someone's all about winning.
You know. Wow.
So, and I said I wasn't going to lose on national TV.
No.
So, and it was a really nice pop-up store.
Well,
but no one would have come in and found it. It would have sold zero, just like the other guys.
Well, you guys were known at Kirshenbaum Bond for purpose-driven marketing is a term that we hear. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and why it was so effective for you?
Yeah, well, it really came out of cynicism, you know, because we were, first of all, before us, there were no agencies started by people in their 20s. You know, if you look at Mad Men, Don Draper was probably 35 or 40 in the show. That's what most people did. They built a reputation. Then they started an agency with clients or capital or something. We had nothing. So we had this kind of, we don't really believe advertising or like advertising view, which made us very outsiders, but also created a lot of innovation. So we go, well, people don't like advertising, and who cares if the detergent is like, cleans up stuff 2% better. So we gravitated to that to try to do things that made a difference. But again, we didn't call it that. So yeah, like the Kenneth Cole campaign and a whole bunch of things we did had a higher purpose just because we wanted to ladder the brand up to something people really cared about.
Right. I mean, you guys were so innovative, though. I mean, we touched on a little bit like the first pop-up store. I mean, I've seen it said that you kind of created viral marketing, a lot of guerrilla sort of tactics when it came to sidewalk ads, using real people in advertising. Can you kind of talk about the impetus for that? Like what made you guys think differently? Again,
it was pushing against the status quo of what was done there. So the best real people campaign, the best idea we ever had was Snapple.
Right.
Which was
the Snapple lady.
The Snapple lady who was the secretary in the marketing department. And we had this idea that Coke and Pepsi are so slick, you know, everything's perfect, everything's orchestrated, you know, and of course, anytime there was a mistake, it would blow up, you know, new Coke or anything like that.
Right.
And we thought, well, Snapple, like, this horrible packaging, and everyone wanted to change the packaging. We went, no, it looks like two guys brewing this stuff up in their basement. It looks just imperfect and grassroots. And we thought, you know, how do we do that at scale? Because when they came to us, Coke and Pepsi were in the process of knocking off Snapple and rolling it out nationally. And we go, we were only in 2 markets. How do we roll this out nationally? Took a decade for this to sort of bubble up to the surface.
Right.
How do we create that instantly, right? And we have to go on TV. And so we said, you know, most people heard us about Snapple through word of mouth, not through advertising. We had this idea, 100% natural marketing, which was we're gonna just make the whole company transparent. Everything that happens, we're gonna show the way it really does. So we looked for a device to do that, and we saw that Wendy was answering these letters. You know, the fact that people would actually write letters expecting an answer. And we thought, look, we'll answer the letters on TV, but there won't be any scripts. People will write letters, we'll pick interesting letters where we think, you know, again, like reality TV, the situation's going to create something funny.
Sure.
So one woman wrote from Indianapolis that she had this dog, Shane, that we called Shane the Wonder Dog. And so anytime she opens the Snapple, the dog comes running, loves Snapple. So we go there, we point the camera at the lady and Shane for the whole day. And we opened hundreds of Snapples, and the dog just sat. And we ran that. So a kid would write, I wish everyone in my high school could get Snapple. And all of a sudden the truck pulls up. There's 1,000 Snapples we're handing out.
Yeah.
And that was just an event. It wasn't even a TV commercial.
Sure.
And I think what's interesting also about Snapple is that there was a whole culture in the company around the brand. And, you know, I think what really makes a great brand is a culture. And the brand management system that was created by Procter & Gamble in the 50s, I think is outdated because there's no brand culture. There's just a brand manager. You were working on Tide, now you're working on some other brand, switching around every 2 years. And today, especially, that was very visionary, because now everything's transparent with the internet.
Right.
So everything you do, your hiring policy, it's all marketing. It's all out there, right? And so we were very ahead of our time. So Snapple was so successful that Thomas H. Lee, who had one of the first PE funds, introduced me for years when he'd see me at parties as the man that made me $2 billion. But unfortunately, he sold the company to Quaker. Quaker was a classic brand management system, and the culture was a bad culture fit with Snapple.
Okay.
And originally they go, don't let us screw it up. We're not going to change anything, which, is impossible. And then they started saying things like, Wendy, is she too New York? Which we know means short, fat woman with a bad Long Island Jewish accent.
Right.
And what was wrong about that was that the average woman in America is a size 14, and they related to Wendy.
Right.
Kind of like Oprah when Oprah was heavy.
Sure.
And it had nothing to do with ethnicity or anything. It was Wendy was real, and everything was real, and people sensed that they trusted the brand and it was authentic.
Right.
So eventually they changed everything, got rid of us, and then killed the brand and sold it at a fraction of what it was, 300 million, I think.
Yeah.
I think they bought it for 2 billion, and everybody got fired, the CEO, the CMO, and all because I think brands are culture.
Yeah. I mean, Snapple, you said, is probably your favorite, but you worked with so many companies. I have, Coca-Cola, Wendy's, BMW, Tommy Hilfiger, Victoria's Secret, Delta. Was there another, is there another ad campaign that you came up with where you really feel like you took a company to the next level? You took a brand to you really just killed it with it, that you look back and you're really proud of?
Target. Yeah, we went to Target. It was 1996. And we had another meeting with the mattress company. And at that point, Target was not that different than Kmart or Walmart. They were big box, and they were trying to figure out, do we just compete with Walmart on price, or we do something else?
Right.
And no one wanted to go to the meeting because it's just a big box. We don't have any interest. But we stopped by while we were there. And we said, yeah, something else. That's what you should do. And, interesting thing was they were started by a department store company. And so the sensibility was very department store. And we had this whole idea about democratizing style and all of that stuff. And we got all these designers to make for Target, which they never would before. And we advertised them in chic places, and it just created this whole idea of treating it like it wasn't a big box.
Right.
And it made it okay for people to go buy clothes and things like that in a big box store. It was very groundbreaking, and I should have bought the stock because it went crazy. But that was, they had other agencies executing.
Right.
But it was us who came up with that pivot point.
Sure.
And again, back to culture. It has to do with, the only reason this was doable was they had all these department store people, and a guy named John Pellegrin who had a theater background, so very theatrical. And again, they would walk around every month with the CEO, who I believe was Bob Ulrich then, and there was no budget. They'd put all the ideas up around the conference room, and they'd go, yeah, that's pretty good. That's worth $5 million. Nah, forget that. Hey, that's really good. That's 20 million on that.
Right.
And literally that's where the budget would come from. It was
But they'd
really
see the idea.
brilliant.
They would see the idea first.
They'd see the idea,
assign a budget
and
to
then
it,
put a number on
instead
it.
of saying let's have a number and try to squeeze a creative idea within that number.
Exactly. There was no the budget was zero every year,
Right.
until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
Which I thought was also genius.
Did you ever have any real a-hole clients? Any just jackass people you did not want to deal with?
Every agency does.
Okay.
The trick is to figure out when there's a bad match. And by the way, they could have been a great client for someone else.
Right.
But I'll tell you about some, and I'll tell you what we ended up doing.
Right.
Because I got frustrated with this sort of computer dating thing with clients. And I hired a guy who was a Myers-Briggs personality profiling expert. And I used to have him come in every month and teach us. And also I hired more diverse people.
Right.
So I could cast the sort of process-oriented, anal retentive client with this person. I even hired somebody from our Citibank client to play that role. And, those sort of clients, I'd have to give the creative people a pill to get through the meeting, but it would work. And then we got a lot bigger and more successful then. Because sometimes the a-hole client isn't necessarily an a-hole. It's that you're a bad match. So there's a maturity level that you have to get through to get it. But there were some that really were.
You want to name names?
A-hole clients.
I mean, this is the forum.
I don't think Donald
place.
Trump was my favorite client.
Not that.
Plus, he didn't pay us. So that immediately
That takes him down a bit of a notch.
Yeah. The other thing about clients was different cultures.
Yeah.
So again, you learn to adapt to personality types. Like we had BMW for years and, very Germanic. It was like, you will do this for this price and the sales will go up, or we get someone else to do it for less money.
Right.
Stab you in the front. And I was like, okay. The French I found very difficult to deal with because the meeting happened before the meeting. And they had already decided something, but no one told you or invited you.
Really?
So I found them very often very difficult.
Because you didn't know what you were, at least with the Germanic.
I could deal with the stab me in the front, tell me what it is, and that's how it is. But again, they're different personality fits for different kind of clients.
That's so interesting.
If they let us do good work, then we didn't matter.
Sure.
Then everything else was fine. We could put up with anything. If they had the 11 housewives in a focus group pick the ad by voting and basically made them the CMO, that's a bad client, even if we liked them personally.
Right. So
we were very focused on doing really good work and could put up with anything if we could do good work, and couldn't put up with anything if we couldn't.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's understandable. What process? I guess every agency probably has a different, as you mentioned, culture, even different processes. So can you walk us through the process at Kirshenbaum Bond and Partners of how an idea would go, as I like to say, from brain to boardroom to billboard? I mean, what is that actual exercise like?
Well, first of all, agencies always say they have this process, okay? And it's usually bullshit.
Okay.
Because everyone knows if you have a good idea that didn't happen in the process, good. And if you don't have a good idea, bad.
Right.
So, for example, right? But clients always want to see a process to know that you can replicate things.
Right.
And what I used to say is, okay, let me tell you, let's talk about process, okay? Michael Jordan in the 90s, right, would be able to run up and jump from the foul line and dunk the ball from the foul line. And let's look at the process he went through. He had 73% of his weight on his left foot, and he had a hip and flex and this and that. And if I said to you, go ahead, now you do it. Well, I can't. I go, exactly. And you can't do this either.
Right. So at the end of the day, talent is a large factor, and just getting it.
Talent and like, look, my process is, as I've done it 1,000 zillion times, I look at something or an ad or logo or something, and it hits me emotionally. Like, boom. It hits me before I can even think about it. And then I have to take a few seconds and think, why did it hit me that was wrong or so right? And then I have to articulate in rational terms why it made me feel a certain way. Mm-hmm. And that's my process.
Right.
Because a lot of brand people who went to Harvard, I used to go, damn, these people went to Harvard and they're so dumb. How is that possible? And I go, you know why? Because they're intellectualizing what the right thing is. They're looking for a lesson, and they are disconnected from how it makes me feel. And unless you're tuned into that, and you can look at it through the eyes of your target audience and go, that would make me feel this way. Unless you can do that, you can never, ever become good at marketing, because in the end, that's what you're trying to do, is predict how it's going to impact people.
That's interesting. It's got, there's got to be a heart element to it, not just your head. I mean,
It's got to be both. You need to have both sides of the brain.
Now, you kind of alluded to this, but I mean, your agency was characterized by its sort of commitment to, I mean, outcasts were sort of welcome. Yeah. You wanted people that had extreme acceptance of all kinds of people, all kinds of ideas. What's behind that philosophy? Why do you think that was successful?
What's behind the philosophy is any agency. It's the people who found the agency have a culture, and that always is the culture of the agency. So we look, the agency had people that were not accepted. They were, outcasts in high school, or they were gay, or they were something, right? And always felt that they weren't comfortable where they were. They had a work personality and a real personality, and this was the first place where they were both the same. And people look at what's politically correct, and I think the most politically correct you can be is to have people to be supported for being their self. But that said, there were all kinds of crazy things that we did that today would be considered, I don't know, politically incorrect. I remember we had our 10th anniversary party, and Trevor, the African-American cross-dressing receptionist, put on a Marilyn Monroe blonde wig and jumped out of a cake and sat on my lap and Richard's lap and sang "Happy Birthday, Mr. President." I don't know if that would go on today, but it happened.
You guys at your industry, I mean, at your agency, you were known as being rebels, as being agitators. You would push the envelope a lot. Some people, a lot of controversial ads. But as I looked at all of your ads, they're all clever. There's so much creativity in there. Do you think that if you're going to be controversial, you have to be clever? Otherwise, you're just doing it for the sake of shock value, and it's not really...
I think there has to be a point to it. Controversy for just the sake of controversy is superficial and doesn't really work. I mean, we once had a dumb idea for Gannett out of home for billboards, because everyone thought billboards kind of low impact, and we wanted to create something controversial. And one of the billboards in Detroit actually ended up getting burned down by a Muslim group. So that was going a little far.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, you got reached out to by ethnic advocacy groups. Even the Reagan White House got a little peeved at one point. Yeah. When these things would happen, more often than not, would you take a step back and say, maybe we're going too far? Or would you say we're doing something right?
Oh, we're definitely doing something right.
Yeah.
Definitely doing something, because remember, there was no social media then. So to create something that got viral, basically it had to be on the news and written about by journalists, right? That's not so easy.
So you really had to grab their
You have
attention.
to really
a billboard
create
on fire
news.
That's going to make news,
Right. So the bar was much higher, and today viral, it's much lower. You don't really need to have what you needed to have then.
Well, I mean, obviously a flaming billboard, but which ad of yours do you think created the biggest shockwave? I mean, which one just had the most people where you had to just deal with everybody in a good or bad way? Oh my gosh, did you see this ad?
The Donna Rice No Excuses ad when Gary Hart was running for president, and we never actually spent any money on media. We just had these tapes of the commercial, and literally at this press event handed them out to all the state. They just ran the commercial endlessly for free. But that was very controversial. But that was a jeans brand. Again, we had this idea called the volume dial, which is how high you turn it up depended on the tonality of each brand.
What was the biggest win of your career? If you had to say something that either a client that you fought to get and it worked out great, an idea that you really pushed for, something that meant a lot to you that maybe you had some resistance and you look back and you're just proud that you considered a great win.
Oh, geez, getting car count. We lost 9 straight car pitches till we ended up getting BMW. Wow. And I remember everyone hated me because, for one time we were pitching Saab, and I remember for 21 straight days, I had literally everyone in the office till 3 a.m. every single day, 21 straight days, and we lost. And we kept almost winning and losing and losing. And a car account, at least at that time, was like making your bones. That was
right.
That was what made you kind of on the A list.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, I love watching movies and reading books about people, watching people make it, quote unquote, going from, where they want to be to all of a sudden getting there, right? And was there a moment in your life where you actually could feel your life changing, where you could actually say, I think I'm making it. I think I'm there.
In this business, you're really scared to ever say that because you're paranoid because they really are out to get you. Right. I mean, winning clients is so hard, and losing it, just one little thing, boom. Change of marketing director or anything like that. And so you never want, anytime I start to feel that way, the ad gods would just shoot down a lightning bolt from Mount Olympus and say, no, not so fast.
So there are Greeks in advertising too, along with Jews and Italians.
The ad gods are get very angry sometimes. I mean, sometimes I had to sacrifice an account executive or two just to appease them.
Just to appease them. You've obviously made a lot of really great decisions over the course of your career, many more good than bad, I'm assuming, as evidenced by the fact that I'm here wanting to ask you about your life. But is there a decision that you made that you would love to take back, a business decision?
God. Here's my rule about bad decisions and bad thing. The worse the thing is that happened, the longer it takes to be funny.
Okay, that's fairly easy to understand.
So some things took like 5 years to be funny. The dumbest thing we ever did was in the late 90s, we opened an office in San Francisco. Right at the beginning of the .com. And all of a sudden we had 100 people. And we went, wow, this is great. It's going to last forever. And we took this huge space for like an 8-year lease or something ridiculous. And then, in a couple of years, we had an office, but not an agency. That was the dumbest thing we ever did. I still don't think it's funny.
No, I was going to say, is there anything that still keeps you up?
Actually, and it was like, in that part of San Francisco, it kept getting gentrified because they would take more space in the bad areas and move a block or two. And we went way out. Like, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be crazy expensive, and then we're gonna have this great space. And I remember the day that I thought this isn't gonna happen. I'm sitting in the glass conference room in a pitch, and there was a glass wall, and it went through to the street. And I remember look up, and there's sort of like this homeless guy kind of hanging out by that. And all of a sudden, a wall of yellow comes splattering against the conference room.
From his top or his bottom?
From his bottom.
Okay, I don't know if we were talking vomit or we're talking...
I don't think this one's gonna make it.
No, that's the bad omen, I feel like.
That's the bad omen, yeah.
Well, what was the best advice you ever got?
Best advice I ever got was... in the first couple of years, we were known as the sort of outliers. And in fact, people used to hate us because we were, who are these guys? Who do they think they are? And funny, one day we made T-shirts that said, I'd never work for those fucks at Kirshenbaum Bond, and we all wore them around. But anyway, we were sort of outside the industry. Guy who was the CEO of Chiat Day at that point, named Bob Wolf, had lunch with me once, and he said, you should be part of the industry. And I said, yeah, you're right. So I remember I joined the 4As, I got on the board of the 4As, I started to get more involved in the industry, and he was right.
I think you've carved out a pretty badass niche for yourself, and I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me. This has been really enlightening and educational and entertaining, and I expected nothing less. So, Jon Bond, thank you very much.
Thank you.